KTN News.
Well, that story by Finny Koloch ushers us into the second part of this show, all to do with the discussion we had hinted about earlier on. We will focus on the capitation issues facing public schools in the country. As you well know, the Teachers Union KUPPET has demanded for all unremitted capitation funds owed to public schools. If not, they have threatened to call a strike to paralyze operations at the beginning of the second term. Now, to have more on this particular conversation, I'm joined by the Secretary General at KUPPET, Akelo Misori. Thank you so much for your time. It's the first time we're meeting in this year, so Happy New Year, maybe.
Happy New Year to you too.
Yes, unfortunately, it's not too happy, yeah?
Yeah, it is not too happy.
Okay, but you're smiling. It seems you've borrowed something from today's Standard headline. They say, if government owes you, it's time to strike. KUPPET recently issued a strike notice. So government owes you, you're about to strike.
In fact, it is unfortunate that we have to go that route.
Yeah.
Because one thing which is deplorable is that Kenya and the leadership has signed to protect the Constitution. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that will guarantee the Constitution of Kenyans is the right to education. And if that right is not being undertaken very seriously, it is the only government department which has received reduction in expenditure, while increment is there in even foreign travel, in the renovation of offices and the like.
Okay.
The education which is supposed to be given a very serious consideration suffers reduction. And one more thing is the element of capitation that you mentioned.
Okay.
That the government set the current rates of capitation at 22,000 shillings, 244. Mm-hmm. And by that, the government had already agreed through circulars that, and consensually agreed upon by institutions, that at least when this is at that level, yeah, then 50% of 22,244 would be 11,122. So currently, the schools are just a week away to closure. And that is the import of our threat, that okay, the amount which has been so far disbursed to schools is only 25% of the first term. Oof. And 75% has not been done. This is the term with the heaviest responsibility. It has got sports, it has got to do with the fresh students entering the school, yeah, like Form 1s, and therefore a lot of purchases are geared towards that, especially towards tuition. So schools are now riddled with debt to the extent that some schools, especially in Nyeri County, have been taken to court. This is a public institution who are taken to court.
Taken to court by suppliers?
By suppliers.
Okay.
And those creditors whose monies have not been paid.
All right.
So it is just unfortunate that a key area like education is the one which now want to suffer a reduction of capitation by 24%.
And we'll get to the reduction of capitation. First of all, it's proper to note that we had extended an invite to Julius Melly, the chair of the National Assembly Education Committee. He is non-responsive, but the show must go on. So
let me just say this.
Yes.
That one institution which has remained very steadfast to protect what we have is now that Committee of Parliament. Yeah. I wonder why my friend has not come here.
Yeah.
He's the only person and the only Committee of Parliament which has integrity, that really protected the budget of education, and they are the ones who are responsible over these promotions of teachers of 36,000. If it was not for that committee, we could not have had that. So I must say that one early. But the rest of other institutions are making the situation worse. I wonder what has happened to our Principal Secretary for Education, Basic Education, Dr. B.L. Kipsang. He is the person who has been there longest, the architect of CBC, and is now proposing to Parliament that to the country that we should reduce at this particular time and point the education expenditure by 24%. That is very unfortunate.
It doesn't make sense. From
It doesn't make sense
okay.
at a time when the country, the currency has suffered a lot of blow in terms of its strength in the world trading market.
Tell me, from where you sit, what would be the impact of reducing that capitation from 22,244 to roughly 17,000, as they had mentioned? What would be the impact?
Chaos, and chaos. Because even as currently obtains, that money which was intended to reach schools has never reached schools in its entirety. A lot of it remains at the Ministry of Headquarters, where they pretend to undertake a lot of activities, like, for example, sports, drama, and science fair. Currently, these are the events which were taking place this term.
Okay.
And as I've told you, the schools all merely received 200 shillings per child for all these events. And that one totaled to 3,877 shillings.
Okay.
Instead of 11,122. So once it is reduced, and with the rising cost of living and all its attendant implications, we find that it will not work. You know, the current leadership has taken priorities elsewhere, and education is being ignored. It is being ignored in a 3 trillion budget. Education is being ignored, and where it matters most.
Okay, it's definitely unfortunate, but let's track back and find out, are there any assurances, especially on the delay of release of capitation funds fully to schools across the country? Is there any assurance given by the ministry, timelines as well, given as to when they might be able to send these monies?
It is now difficult for us to believe the Cabinet Secretary for Education, especially with all the promises that he gives. All the assurances are not met, because by last week, he said that the money will be in schools. They didn't specify the amount they will send in school. And as I've told you, today is Monday, the end of business. No school has received the remainder of the 75% which was supposed to arrive in school. What I know is that the Cabinet Secretary is waiting for the schools to close by God's providence, and then come next term, they will also send another 25%, and they will not have even reached the 50% of the first term that they were supposed to receive. This is the challenge, and this is the crisis which is facing education. If we had somebody who is so sensitive, they would have known. You know, one thing which this thing has also led to is that you realize that because of the delayed capitation, because of the reduction, even children health have been put on the wire. So these are where the issues are.
Okay.
The head teachers we have in our schools are living under very stressful moments. If you have a principal who is not having blood pressure, that is just the grace of God. There is nothing predetermined that our schools and our head teachers are comfortable.
And
there's a lot of stress, and especially those who are running day schools.
Okay.
Those who are having boarding schools are cushioned by giving substandard diet to our learners and now paying up for the deficit which ought to have been done by capitation.
Okay.
So that is the challenge.
In terms of delay, are we talking about a delay in this current financial year, or this has been the trend over a period of time?
It has been the trend over time. And that's why I'm saying that I don't know what has happened to my friend, Dr. Bello Kipsang, who, when he was retained in the current administration, we thought he would bring sanity, and therefore, because he's part of the institutional memory, which should not have been part of this challenge. Okay. But if there is no money from government, then we should have been told. But why do they change the rule of the game why are they drawing another size of the field when the learners are in school? I saw pedestrian explanation that over the years that the number of children continue to rise, and Parliament has not revised this. What I know is that Parliament has always appropriated everything which has been proposed by the Cabinet Secretary for Education.
Yes.
This time round, Parliament is not being given another challenge to appropriate. They are being told reduce the capitation from 22,000 to 122 instead of raising it to 35,000.
Yeah.
Because from the ongoing economic challenges, the Kenyan shilling has really faced challenge. Even as we have had improvement in agricultural production because fertilizer was reduced. That's the only thing. But remember, fuel was not reduced. So we have got rising costs in fuel, which has got attendant increment in other products, which are being used in school. So it would be a correct balancing act if we really ring-fenced the amount which goes to school.
Okay.
Yeah.
And some might argue that fuel is coming down right now, but what you mean is the increase of VAT from 8 to 16%. It definitely leaves a compound impact. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about that reduction of capitation, because we had Belio Kipsang speak about it last week, I think Monday, stating that, capitation to learners will be reduced from 22,244 to around 17,000 annually for tuition needs. You've mentioned you have reservations against this move, but was a proper approval sought to reduce this amount? You've mentioned how critical Parliament is in terms of the budget-making process. Were they talked to when this particular decision was come upon?
The grassroots support ought to have come from the stakeholders who have been main consumers of the 22,244. That the schools, what are their feelings about this reduction? Because as I talk to you now, most schools had clinics for Form 1s this last week, and all schools presented an increment in fees. I've just talked to a principal in Nairobi, and a principal who is telling me that a national school budget of 53,000, which was capped for boarding school, cannot sustain boarding school. They have also indicated to you that if these figures being reduced were being sent to schools directly without any interference, it could have made an impact. But one thing which was very strange with the money which was being retained at the ministry, sometimes books arrived which the money for books was being retained. They arrived at school at the end of the year when they were now not useful. Some of the books were being sent to schools which were not relevant because one book in the language textbooks were sent to schools and mathematics were not sent. So these are the disconnect because the schools were denied the opportunity and the freedom to make purchases because the ministry centralized the purchase. And the person who was the architect of this is none other than Dr. Belio Kipsang. He's now back to the ministry, and he should have known better that they must deal with the issues of the ministry against the background of what was happening in schools. So with us, we think that with the reduction proposed at 24%, more chaotic and crisis is likely to bedevil our schools.
Especially
and therefore
public
lack of public participation in this and just forcing it the throat of Parliament to appropriate, because Parliament, when they realize that you have reduced this and you are the main consumer as a ministry, they will rush definitely to approve this. And this will not solve our problems. The schools now are reeling with a debt of nearly 54 billion. And this one here is because of capitation, which has not been remitted over the years to these schools.
So, and I know calling a strike is a last resort. It's definitely not something you would want to go without putting a negotiation on the table.
I want to tell you this, that this is not a labor issue, but this is a rights issue. We have no platform to negotiate with the minister over lack of capitation. We were calling all Kenyans to look at this, that with this trend happening in the Ministry of Education, we are likely to compromise the quality of education. And that is our right as teachers. And every right-thinking Kenyan must also address this.
Are other unions on board?
Other unions must also look at this as a point. Not because it was a labor dispute, but it is a rights issue. And as Kenyans, going on strike is a right. And you have seen, even the courts have pronounced themselves that if you owe me something, I can strike. If I strike, I can strike in so many ways. I can come and auction your property, or I can demonstrate on the streets that you must give me my right. Exactly. That is what we meant by doing this. And in fact, this is not an empty threat. The schools should be asked not to open unless money is sent to schools. Because the same parliament has appropriated the money. If they have not appropriated the correct amount, then they should go for what we call the other appropriations, like when there is need. The consolidation fund should come to this. Yes.
All right, so away from capitation matters, just briefly, let's talk about what you called for, an extensive audit of students' data in the National Education Management Information System. Is inflated enrollment a concern in the country? Are we losing money to ghost learners from where you sit?
And that is apparently what was being revealed by the records from the ministry. That it was discovered that about 900 students did not undertake the exams which the government had paid for. Don't you think there is need for us to audit the NEMIS itself? Does it contain ghost learners, or it has got real learners? That is a question for the ministry to answer. What is there? Why must we, the government, spend all the money to print papers for 900 candidates and they are non-existent? That one is a revelation about only candidates. It may be a revelation about other classes too. And I think that is the reason for which we are saying it were possible that we get the correct numbers in our schools so that we don't fund anything. We don't fund anyhow. We must fund reasonably.
And is there any progress from the ministry in terms of this?
We have given them our position. We have written to them our concerns, and we expect a response from that. We have also told the other stakeholders, like the general public and parliament, that we need to address ourselves to the Ministry of Education.
That's really proper. Yet another issue, because we're speaking about various issues touching on the education sector. Edu Afya medical insurance scheme became effective in 2018, and it would cover learners in public secondary schools across the country. Recently, the Health CS mentioned that 4.6 billion that's allocated to that insurance scheme will be transferred to the primary healthcare fund, where learners will be covered as households, including other members of their households. Is this a viable alternative from where you sit, from KUPPET's point of view?
Nothing from the truth is justifiable. To mention that 4.6 billion which was meant to cushion that will be. With all the bureaucratic government arrangement, you can see that the universal health program has not kicked off, because household has to be registered by the end of this month, and that is what will generate this money to leave traceably for use. What happens in the process? Like, I have a case of one of my workers. The son fell ill in school and was asked to come and collect. The school asked him, can you come and collect your son for treatment? So you can see, this is a taxpayer who has kept other children in school, and the son is being asked to go to be told to be taken to another facility where the father can afford. In fact, some of these issues which were in the government program about Edu Afya, they were very brilliant. They could only be built upon to build on how serious we were to guarantee. There are two key areas which I feel are being given a raw deal and that is education and health. That's education and health. You have seen now the doctors are on the streets, and besides them being on the streets, EduAfya has also been withdrawn pending the implementation of our program, which has not started. And then we have got learners in school. So these are the things. Even our teachers, now when they have a NHIF card, they are told that you cannot cover this. And then our health issue is also a challenge with the insurer that we have. So that one is an issue, because the insurer must indicate that we have also deducted your NHIF. In an event that you don't have your NHIF, the teacher has to pay for that bit before our insurer comes in.
Yeah.
That is the practice. So these are the issues which are really hitting us hard, which make us to think that if the government cannot address itself to this, then everybody should rise up and join us in a massive strike, because we cannot just sustain. Let me ask, is it possible for schools to run their programs with 25% in first term? The answer is no, because first term has the heaviest number of activities in sports, drama, music, and science fair. The first term is where we receive new students. How do we cater for tuition fees, like buying chemicals and so on? Most schools I talk to, other principals of other schools, they told me they suspended laboratory exercises because the money was not there. So is that the way to go? We are compromising the quality of our learners in our schools. This is something which is immoral and should not be allowed to take place. Somebody must pay for it, and we must not keep quiet, because as those in education and as teachers, we feel so bad when we are seeing that education going down the drain because of simple things which can be addressed by a government which is responsible and which was elected on a very popular platform of addressing the needs of Kenyans.
As we finalize, Bwana SG, because you've definitely raised your concerns, you've written a letter to the ministry. In the next couple of days before the beginning of the second term, ideally, what would you, as KUPPET, want the government to tick in terms of the boxes that haven't been ticked so far before the second term starts?
First, we don't want our teachers to enter into the box of stress. That is one. Two, we want the ministry to act responsibly and send money to schools.
On time.
On time.
Is that possible, bearing in mind we're having financial challenges?
Three, it is now proper for the ministry to wake up to the challenges of this generation and give Kenyans the quality of education that they want and they deserve. Because soon we will not be in the same league with Tanzania, Uganda, and Rwanda. We will be a nation which is reeling, and we are having a lot of brain drain, like we saw the other time when many learners were going to Uganda to take courses. There's something which I was trying, which I almost forgot, which I need to say here. What has worked, even the new funding framework for education, for universities, which number of students have benefited from the bursaries or from the scholarships or from the Higher Education Loans Board, from the new funding model? When you go to the website, you are blocked, you cannot apply. I think we are getting our priorities wrong. It is better now we wake up and face the realities and do things rightly. That is my last message.
As simple as that. But you know, if you approach the ministry and they tell you, we don't have money, The doctors went and approached earlier on before the negotiation started. They were told our hands are tied. There's no money within government. So as much as you have demands, could we meet at the center in order to,
And now who should provide the center? Because as we are here, if the president put a lot of emphasis in education like he does in housing, then we'll be there. Because the money for education has been appropriated. We have supplementary budget to cater for our pitfalls. The taxes are now reaching double digits in collection, and we are getting a record. And everybody is happy that things are doing well. Why don't we have the government department functioning well? I have already told you that hospitality in government offices like tea, the budgets have risen up and that they don't suffer reduction.
Yeah.
Why must education suffer reduction? Why must we have doctors on the streets? If the doctors continue to be on the streets after the end of this April, what do you think the teachers will be happy going back to teach when they know very well that if they fall sick, they cannot be treated? When the learners in school are beating them because they cannot offer services? It is upon government to wake up to the realities of the day.
Simple. And
get its priorities right to give Kenyans what they deserve. Otherwise, I know at this appeal to the president that if the same energy he has in housing can also be given to education, then we will be home and dry.
Well, education is a right, at the end of the day. So we're hoping this bad situation does not get worse. We're hoping that, the ministry and the appropriate stakeholders actually listen to the plight and avert a bad situation from becoming worse. We definitely do not hope for industrial action because that is the last resort. But it seems you're keen on this path to make sure that quality of education is not hampered in one way or the other. Well, Akelo Misori, thank you so much for your time. It was proper to have that informative discussion, at least get where KUPPET is coming from in terms of agitating for some of these things, including the timely release of capitation funds. They're against the reduction of capitation to schools across the country, and equally a couple of issues to do with Edwafia medical insurance scheme that affects learners and teachers in one way or the other. Asante sana for your time, Bwana SG.
Thank you so much.
And we're hoping next time the Education Committee members will be available for the discussion as well. Thank you so much. Back at home, I hope you're adequately informed. My name is Jesse Rogers. That brings us to the end of tonight's edition of KTN Prime. Good evening.